Regarding the 2026 fiscal year defense budget proposal submitted by the Trump administration, although the U.S. Congress has not yet completed full review and approval, and senior U.S. Navy officials are still sparing no effort to emphasize to congressional members the importance of the carrier-based sixth-generation fighter FAXX program, it currently appears that the Trump team's previous decision to terminate the development of FAXX and divert all resources and efforts to the Air Force's sixth-generation fighter program F-47 is highly likely to be passed by Congress. It seems that, at least in the field of the world's first carrier-based sixth-generation fighter, China, having already test-flown 2 sixth-generation fighter prototypes, will likely overtake the United States to claim this global first. Due to the difficult choice facing the U.S. government and senior Pentagon officials in developing sixth-generation fighters, akin to choosing between saving the mother or the child, and the eventual result of having to prioritize one over the other, many attribute this to the depreciation of the U.S. dollar caused by inflationary pressures, as well as the stagnation of America's fighter aircraft industry in recent years, coupled with a lack of funds and technology. To be fair, this view does hold some merit. The declining real purchasing power of the U.S. dollar has led to an apparent increase but actual decrease in U.S. military spending in recent years, despite its seemingly astronomical figures, undoubtedly exacerbated by incidents like $90,000 bags of screws and $6 million goats. Additionally, the continuous loss of manufacturing industries in 2 decades-long counterterrorism and security wars have indeed caused signs of stagnation in the research and development capabilities of America's fighter aircraft industry. However, is this the sole reason for the virtual abandonment of the FAXX fighter program? Probably not. Upon careful reflection, the decision to prioritize F-47 over FAXX was by no means an impulsive move by the Trump administration. Behind it may lie deeper implications. The current U.S. government has likely, whether intentionally or unintentionally, largely abandoned the idea of engaging in certain military conflicts with China in the Asia-Pacific region. Okay, at this point, there will definitely be people who raise objections, arguing that this is an overly optimistic view. However, as the saying goes, weaponry is the decisive factor in the development of strategy and tactics. Without corresponding weapons and equipment, it is inevitable that strategies and tactics suited to potential battlefield environments will be difficult to emerge. Specifically regarding fighter jets, when the U.S. took the lead in developing and launching the world's first fifth-generation fighter, the F-22, it targeted the traditional potential battlefield in the European direction, with the Soviet Air Force as its hypothetical enemy. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the second fifth-generation fighter launched by the U.S., the F-35, still showed distinct design considerations prioritizing the needs of the European theater. However, with the rise of China as an emerging power, the U.S. quickly realized that the potential battlefield environment in the Asia-Pacific direction is completely different from that in Europe. Unlike the European continent, which is dotted with numerous land airports belonging to U.S. allies, the Asia-Pacific region is dominated by vast oceans. As a result, the number of land airports the U.S. can rely on is relatively limited, making it difficult for land-based fighter jets to achieve mobile, dispersed deployment and operations. Moreover, these land airports are all within the strike range of potential adversaries' rocket forces. To put it bluntly, the operational actions of the U.S. Air Force, which must rely on land airports, will be greatly restricted by this geographical feature in the Asia-Pacific. In contrast, the U.S. Navy's aviation units, which may only play a supporting role for the Air Force in the European theater, are expected to become the main force of air operations in the Asia-Pacific. After all, aircraft carriers, known as mobile sea airports, can significantly enhance their wartime survivability through continuous maneuvering and relocation. This is far superior to land airports that can only be fixed on the ground. From this perspective, in the face of a battlefield environment in the Asia-Pacific that is completely different from that in Europe, the U.S. Navy's aviation units are undoubtedly more suitable to serve as the main force, while the U.S. Air Force is more like a supporting role. However, the Trump administration ultimately decided to prioritize the F-47 and abandon the FAXX, and the underlying reasons are clearly worth speculating about. Perhaps in its view, among the three key strategic directions the U.S. is currently facing, Europe, the Middle East, and the Asia-Pacific, the potential battlefield environments of the first two directions can rely on the Air Force as the main force, and only the Asia-Pacific direction requires the Navy's aviation units to take the lead. Given this, with limited overall U.S. resources and a mindset of the minority submitting to the majority, it naturally had to choose between the F-47 and the FAXX. In other words, from the perspective of global strategic deployment, the land-based sixth-generation fighter F-47 is more appropriate than the carrier-based FAXX. After all, the Asia-Pacific direction is just a local part of the U.S. global strategic deployment. That said, this decision is equivalent to the U.S. consciously or unconsciously giving up the competition for air superiority in the Asia-Pacific direction. What deeper significance this holds may already have different interpretations and answers in everyone's mind.